Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. Something extraordinary happened this week, and it pertains to the election in Cameroon and the response of the African Union, and actually the whole phenomenon of Paul Biya trying to be the president until he's 100. He's trying to be a president until infinity and beyond. So this week, the African Union sent a congratulatory message to the president of Cameroon and to Cameroon for the election results. And that was bizarre. There's no reason why that election can be or should be considered to have been free, fair. There's no valid reason why the African Union should be endorsing or normalizing one of the most repressive regimes, one of the most corrupt regimes, one of the most blatant power grabs that has continued in Africa. And in fact, I would respect the African Union if once they grew a pair and actually were able to say, no, this election was not free and fair. The African Union does not endorse this election. The African Union calls for another set of elections, because then they would be acting in the interest of the people and in the interest of upholding democracy in Africa, something that they have not done, they are not doing. And as a result, I do not take the African Union as a genuine custodian of the interests of ordinary Africans. They seem at times to be custodians of the interests of dictators, brutal regimes, multinational companies, but not necessarily the custodians of everyday Africans. Now, Paul Biya is currently 92. He has won the election in Cameroon, and he effectively is going to rule Cameroon until he's 99 years old. And we may be in a situation 7 years from now where if the man is still on a hospital bed or somewhere, we'll say that he wants to run again. Think about that. This guy has been running Cameroon since 1982. He's been running the country for 43 years as president, but he actually became prime minister of Cameroon in 1975. So if you add that together, effectively, he has been running Cameroon for 5 decades. A power trip of 5 decades. One man, 5 decades. No one man should have all that power. No one man should have all that power. Remember, no one man should have all that power. And it's valid. It's a valid critique, comment, and we have to think about what Cameroon has become. It has basically become this man's personal kingdom. It's the kingdom of Paul Biya. But he actually doesn't even spend much time in the country. He's someone who spends most of his time in Switzerland and in France. He's gone for long periods of time without living in Cameroon, visiting Cameroon, yet he still wants to be president of Cameroon. If and when he dies, he probably won't die in Cameroon. He'll be receiving medical treatment somewhere. It's a travesty that you have many African leaders who follow this very same blueprint, destroy their countries while draining their countries of every last resource and making sure that their people never have a chance of actually actualizing their dreams, their potential, their talents. Nothing. They do everything in Cameroon to make sure that there's one winner. It's effectively what is known as a dominant party state, where one party, one political party, basically controls the government for decades on end. Right? Whether there are elections or there are no elections, that party is in charge. Dominant party state. And Cameroon is a good example of how elections can be used to confer legitimacy to an oppressive regime. Because they go through the election process. 1984, they keep going through the election process. Last one was 2018. Now we've had an election in 2017. But are those elections meaningful? Are they free and fair? I submit to you that they are not. There may be regular elections in Cameroon, but they are regular disruptions of legitimacy in that those elections are rigged every time. They do everything to make sure that there's one winner in those elections. Banning of opposition leaders, suppression of the media and social media, stuffing of ballots, use of violence and intimidation. A dominant party state, whether it's ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe or the CCM in Tanzania or the CPDM in Cameroon, undercuts the basic mechanism of democracy. We have to understand and appreciate that. Let's look at Tanzania. The Chama Chama Pinduzi. Chama Chamapinduzi, which means Party of the Revolution, CCM, is the dominant ruling party in Tanzania, and is the second longest ruling party in the history of Africa. It was formed in 1977 following the merger of the Tanganyika African National Union, TANU, and the Afro-Shirazi Party, the ASP, which were the sole operating parties in mainland Tanzania and the semi-autonomous islands of Zanzibar. So TANU and its successor CCM have ruled Tanzania uninterruptedly since its independence. Think about that. ZANU-PF has been ruling Zimbabwe since 1980, its independence, under the leadership of Robert Mugabe from 1980 till 2017 and Emmerson Mnangagwa from 2017 up until now. And Emmerson Mnangagwa wants to run Zimbabwe up until 2030 and possibly beyond. Think about that. Think about the implications of that. His children are occupying cabinet positions, military positions. It may very well be the country of the Mnangagwas for the foreseeable future, right? Dominant party state. There are others as well on the continent. Now, when you think about a state itself, because I've spoken about a dominant party now, a dominant party has been covered. A state is characterized by four elements: permanent population, defined territory, a government, and sovereignty. It's an organized political community that exercises authority and governance over its people within specific geographical area, and it's supposed to maintain order and security in that area. This is a rough definition of a state. The government acts as the organizational structure that enforces laws, provides public services, manages external relations, and sovereignty refers to the state's ultimate authority over its territory, free from external interference. Now, a state effectively has a monopoly on violence and a monopoly on the public purse, which is the funds that are collected from the taxes. They basically control that, those who govern. Now, the question then becomes, what gives a state legitimacy? What makes that something that is legitimate for people to participate in, for people to go along with, right? That monopoly on violence. Because some monopoly on violence can be illegitimate, some can be legitimate. What typically, as democratic scholars would argue, gives a state legitimacy to have the monopoly on violence and control of the purse is the consent of the people. Those who govern do so with the consent of the governed, who then choose representative leaders who then go and represent their interests. That's what's supposed to happen. Now, for that system to work effectively, you need competition and you need to have free and fair processes for people to choose freely. When you have those contesting elections not being challenged by comparable rivals, they know that if they fail to deliver, there's no more mechanism for taking them out of power and giving it to other people. And when elections are rigged, or when there's intimidation or suppression or whatever, what effectively those in power are doing is hijacking the levers of power by abusing the process wherein consent is supposed to be acquired. That then renders that particular nation state illegitimate. I submit to you that Cameroon is an illegitimate state, and I submit to you that many of these dominant party states are actually illegitimate because people are not enjoying success from free and fair elections. They are actually rigging, stuffing ballots, suppressing media. So if you think about South Africa and the African National Congress, the African National Congress can be described as a dominant party state because they have been governing South Africa at the national level since 1994, right? Which is 31 years of uninterrupted government of South Africa. What makes it a legitimate execution of that is that actually it's been done under free and fair conditions. You have a free and robust media in South Africa. You have an independent electoral commission. You have transparent elections where the results are expeditiously announced, and by and large, there are not a lot of contestations of those election results. So it's not illegitimate. We can talk about corruption. We can talk about hoshkari behavior. We can talk about a lot of things. You know, some people will talk about BE. I talk about baddie economic empowerment more than black economic empowerment because I think baddie economic empowerment has been worse than black economic empowerment. I actually think that there's nothing wrong with black economic empowerment. It's a topic that I've covered in a different video. But there's also cocaine economic empowerment because you cocaine sniffers of cocaine, you rascals, you have empowered these hoshkari ones to basically ravage the state and unleash chaos. You are part of the problem. It's you line people. Me, I don't even know what cocaine looks like in the real world. I just seen it on pictures, and then I think I saw it in Narcos and Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is not even about cocaine, it's about meth. But you sniffers, outside of the problems of crime, etc., that's a real democracy. Now, these other entities that's not real democracy. And as such, they are illegitimate states, I submit to you. Now, I want to talk about two other interesting concepts or definitions which I think are important to keep in mind when thinking about Cameroon and democracy in Africa. Two words. One is kleptocracy, and the second is gerontocracy. A kleptocracy is a government or state in which the ruling officials are politically corrupt and financially self-interested, using their power to exploit the nation's resources and steal public funds for their personal gain and to enrich their families and associates. The term literally means rule by thieves and is derived from the Greek roots kleptes, thief, and kratos, power. You know, when a pastor starts talking about the original Greek, you know that pastor's cooking. The pastor's like, oh, the original Greek. So, hey, I'm not preaching in terms of the theological sense, but now you know kleptocracy, the roots are from kleptis and kratos, thief and power. Ruled by thieves, kleptocracy. Now, the question for you in the comments is, which kleptocracies can you think of, right? So there are many kleptocracies in Africa. These homies be horse carrying everything. Which ones can you think of? Before we go on to the second term, have you subscribed to the channel? We're trying to end horse carry behavior in South Africa, in the SADC region, in Africa. Bring it down to zero. Let's expose all the horse carry nanigans everywhere, all the horse carry stands. Let's expose Horseville in its entirety. We need your subscription. Free 99 till 30.99. Free 99. Mahala, mahala, mahala. So subscribe, press notifications, jump into the comments, helps others to find the channel. You may think you're subscribed, just double check. Yesterday, somebody told me they realized they were watching the YouTube on their girlfriend's phone, then they press subscribe. Only later did they realize they were not subscribed when on their own device. So subscribe on your own device as well. Right, let's keep going. Gerontocracy is a form of rule in which an entity is ruled by leaders who are substantially older than most of the adult population. Now, Cameroon fits into both kleptocracy and also gerontocracy, because Cameroon is the worst of both worlds. It's not only a kleptocracy because they be stealing in Cameroon, the corruption is bad there, but also the median age is 19. The president is 92. Ooh, that's a big gap. That's a big gap. 73 years gap. Ha, unacceptable. Unacceptable. If you ask me, it's unacceptable. And also, I just don't think that there's anything that a person with that kind of age gap can do for the generation that he... You mean to tell me this guy knows ChatGPT? Paul Biya? Do you mean to tell me that Paul Biya knows what advancements are being made in Silicon Valley? Does he know what grok is? And these are not important things, to be quite honest with you. I'm just trying to say I don't think this man knows what chip is being used on the latest... AI processing plans or whatever. I don't think he's clued up about anything that matters. I don't think so. I don't think there's... What future is he going to deliver at 92 for his people? Right? In my opinion, that kind of age gap can be a massive problem in leadership. And I think in Africa, we're always told respect elders, etc., etc. And that's true to a degree. But I think at certain points, we must actually start to disrespect these elders because they are not doing anything of value. They are some of the biggest thieves, these elders. So-called leaders. They're not doing anything but hoodwinking the public and stealing and leaving this continent in worse off condition than, its potential and what it could have been. Objectively, I just don't think it's possible for someone that age range to be able to discuss the needs of a complex entity like a state. I actually think that the best age to run a country is from 40 to 60. I think at that point, you still have enough energy, still have a lot to prove. You've accumulated enough technical skills, managerial skills. You've accumulated enough lived experience to be able to run a country. And if you have the character and work ethic that is required, I think you can succeed in that age range. I actually think this thing of 60s and whatever running countries is a bad idea. I think we need to have young people at the helm. And most of these African leaders who are currently, basically, what is it? They're turning into overripe mangoes in positions of leadership. They came in young and fresh, but they don't want to go. They don't want to let others play. They still want to be in leadership positions in perpetuity. I mean, a lot of the ANC heroes were drafting the constitution, negotiating the transition in their 40s. Now they still want to be in charge in their 70s. Come on, guys. Come on. That's horse curry behavior in and of itself. That's horse curryism. That's horse. It's horsey. It's horsey at a high level of horse. Now, interestingly, I actually traveled to Cameroon 2017. And we went there, part of the universities that were going to attend a debating competition there. And yeah, I was genuinely disturbed by what I saw there. Lack of freedom, ever-present threat of state repression. We got there, we landed in Douala, we were going to Biya, and we're given a police escort from the airport to the university. And we were told that that's the only way we would get to the university without spending hours in traffic. And there is crazy traffic in Douala. Crazy traffic. No access to social media platforms such as Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter while we were there. The social media space was fully shut down. Only way to get access was if you actually had landed in Cameroon with a VPN on your phone. But if you got there without a VPN, you were just out of luck. And I was one of the people who hadn't loaded a VPN, so I didn't know what was going on around the world because I couldn't do anything. There's some people who circumvent the system within Cameroon, but it's so cumbersome to try to actually access social media once they've shut it down if you are within Cameroon. And we arrived there early in December of 2017, but late in the year, late in 2017. And that was actually one of the worst times to be visiting Cameroon because we arrived in the middle of an insurgency. At some point, we saw the army marching in, single file on both sides of the road. We're in a bus. And they were marching. You could see that something's about to go down. At night, sometimes you'd hear, gunfire throughout the night. It was crazy. While we were at the universities and some people were living at the hotels in Biya. So at that time, it really felt like I was in that movie, stuck in the middle of that movie. Remember the movie Beast of No Nation? It's on Netflix, starring Idris Elba. It's a beautiful movie, but I can't watch it anymore. It's just too real for me. I can't do Beast of No Nation anymore. It's beautiful. But I cannot watch that movie again. I can't do it. I think the other day I was thinking, let me watch Beast of No Nation. And I was like, no, I can't do it. Up to now, I still can't do it. So we got there in the middle of that insurgency. And let me just tell you a little bit about that insurgency because it's something that just is still a factor in Cameroon. It's due to the Anglophone separatist conflict in the northwest and the southwest regions. You must understand that there's an English-speaking part of Cameroon, it's about 20%, and a French-speaking part. There are many tribes in Cameroon, about 250, and various ethnicities within those tribes. So it's quite a diverse country. You've got Fulani, you've got other tribes, you've got Highland tribes, it's a lot. And there's a lot of history in Cameroon. And that complexity basically sometimes leads to people simplifying the issues between Anglophone and Francophone. But it's not just about the English. It's just that at a certain point, let me go through some of this contextual thing. Modern Cameroon was formed by merging a former British-ruled entity, Southern Cameroons, with a much larger ex-French Cameroon. So upon unification in 1961, the English-speaking regions were originally promised a degree of autonomy in a federal system. However, in 1972, the president at the time, Biya's predecessor, his name was Ahijo, he abolished the federal arrangement and he centralized power in Yaoundé. And this issue of where do the British regions end up falling is quite significant because another part of the British regions which were formerly colonized by Britain actually went into Nigeria. So that side of the country, the western side of the English-speaking side, there's always been a little bit of a tension there. And, there's other tensions as well because Boko Haram, I think, is one of the groups that sometimes operates in the northern side of the country as well. So There's not a lot of stability in some parts of Cameroon. So over decades, the Anglophone Cameroonians felt like they were being marginalized in terms of language rights, education, distribution of resources, and they have a lot of resources in their part of the country, but they felt that like Yaoundé was actually undermining the distribution of those resources, the fairness. And then because Bona, they were mainly English speaking, in terms of the official language and stuff, they found that now a lot of French-speaking technocrats, etc., were being pushed in to Douala and spaces like that which are in their side of the country. Now, in 2016, these frustrations basically boiled up into peaceful protests, and people were demanding more, equal sharing of the resources and the benefits. And, those protests, which were against appointments of various bureaucrats from the Francophone side of the country, really boiled over, right? And the Biya government responded harshly, sent security forces, tear gas, live ammunition, and it became a very, very problematic moment. And that heavy-handed response inflamed tensions. By 2017, what had begun as peaceful protests had escalated into an armed separatist movement, and some Anglophone groups actually declared a self-proclaimed independent state that they called Ambazonia. They were trying to actually do that. And they formed an armed group called the Ambazonia Defense Forces, and other militias actually emerged and began attacking government security forces in those regions. So that conflict quickly escalated further into a full-blown insurgency in the northwest and southwest regions. Separatist fighters were carrying out guerrilla attacks. There were school boycotts. The region was basically becoming ungovernable. And the Cameroonian military responded with a very aggressive counterinsurgency campaign. And there was widespread human rights abuses, extrajudicial killings, torching of villages, kidnappings. A lot of things happened, torture. I think at some point the UN actually spoke about it as well. Government troops have been accused of indiscriminate violence against civilians, burning homes, killing unarmed people. A lot happened there. And the death toll has been quite extreme. I think an estimated 600,000 Cameroonians have been internally displaced. Over 76,000 fled as refugees into Nigeria and other places. High death toll, like I said. There's no exact number on the death toll, but it's been very, very graphic and extensive in terms of the damage that has been done. And it's very difficult for international media to be able to get full access to what is going on in Cameroon because internet is usually shut down. Now in this election, there was a lot of internet shutdown because one of the opposition leader claimed to have won. But as you can see, Biya has been proclaimed to be the winner. They preempted any protest and they declared them illegal. And there's basically been repression. So when we traveled to Cameroon, we were in the middle of that mess that I was talking about. And we got to see what some of the conditions on the ground were like and what the repression was like, right? And Cameroon is not in a good position right now. High levels of underdevelopment. Some of the accommodations which the students were being put in during that debating competition, they were being called hotels, but, people were taking baths out of a bucket in the hotel. Just to put it in context, there was nothing hotel about some of those establishments. And you could see the underdevelopment in the townships of Cameroon, no roads, no plumbing, no electricity in some of the areas in the city, right? In the city. It just felt like a disaster. The people of Cameroon are amazing, man. I loved my interactions with the people of Cameroon. There's a huge soccer culture there, so many soccer fields in Cameroon. You see men and women playing soccer throughout the day, large women teams. It was quite surprising to see. Sometimes with large crowds watching, food was amazing. I had some of the best fish I've ever had in my life while I was in Cameroon. I think I almost had it every day. That's how much I was enjoying that fish. I don't know what it was, what they were doing with it, like massive fish. Every day I was like, give me that fish, give me that fish. The country is going through periods of poverty and underdevelopment, but it's not a poor country. It's not a poor country. It's a wealthy nation with oil resources, cocoa, rubber, much more, right? One of the most fertile places on earth, geographically, one of the most fertile places on earth. And it's one of the most geographically amazing places to study. If you did geography and just look at the physical geography of Cameroon and everything happening there, it's got all parts of Africa in terms of the topography and the climate are actually represented in Cameroon, from the desert environment to lush green environment. And they've got, so much happening there. I think there's some water reservoirs or lakes or whatever where they've actually, there's a volcanic feature that happens there where the water can actually cause, if there's a volcanic eruption, it actually releases gas into the environment, and that gas can actually kill people, and it actually did kill people. It's a fascinating place. It's a fascinating place. Wealthy nation, but 40% of the country is living below the poverty line. 60% are living below the poverty line in the northwest and the southwest. You can see the discrepancies. Some of the highest levels of inequality in Africa are in Cameroon. Cameroon is not seeing the progress it deserves at all, because it has become the property of one man and his political party, Paul Biya. He's one of the worst Africans, in my opinion. One of the worst. One of the worst. There's a crisis in Cameroon, and we must stand in solidarity with the people of Cameroon. And to me, the story of Cameroon is a reminder that we must make democracy work in Africa. Because sometimes we have these criticisms of democracy in Africa, and the argument is almost that we're going to get China. But in Africa, the alternative is not actually China, where you have an efficient party running everything, delivering resources, promoting capitalism, and actually building wealth for the people and making sure there's development for the people. No, that's not what you get in Africa when you don't have democracy. You get Cameroon. You don't even get Russia, which it's controlled by one man, Putin, the oligarchs, but it's still very wealthy and actually a well-developed place. You don't get Russia. You get Cameroon. So while there are many issues with democracy and many problems with democracy that we must have conversations about, I'm just reminded that, oftentimes you get Cameroon if you walk away from democracy. And I'm going to leave you with that. I don't know what you think. Let's have a conversation in the comments. But I'm going to try to also make a lot more Africa content going forward so that we don't forget that hosh curry behavior is not a South African phenomenon only. There are different types of hosh all over the place. And we need to end all hosh curry behavior, not just some hosh curry behavior. Till the next one.